Okay, we're going to move on to the edit mesh modifiers. We're only going to cover a few, and the first of is the edit mesh itself. There is two ways of editing a mesh. There is using the modifier stack and putting the edit mesh into the list, or converting the object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it from this list. So I scroll down the list until I get to the edit mesh modifier, like so, and I've now applied the edit mesh modifier to my list. What I can do is I can pop down and I can bring up sub-objects of the edit mesh. First of is vertex. When I turned on vertex there, you could see that the corners highlighted and became little blue dots. Now that's because a vertex is a point on a face. It's just an XYZ in space that defines the corner of a face. Well, now once we've done this, we can grab these vertices and move them around at will. So that's the first thing we can do with vertices. The second thing is we can take vertices that are very close to one another, like this, and we can turn them into one. Now what we have to do that is we select both vertices, like so. We scroll down until we find this area on the edit mesh palette called weld. We then set the threshold for the weld, and we hit weld, and there you go, the two vertices have become one. That's what we're going to do on vertices. What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to manipulating edges. And edges are the lines that join the vertices. So if I select this edge here, you can see I can move it up, down, left, right, and so on. If we look at all the different controllers for the edges, we can divide an edge, we can control the auto edge tools. There's a fair bit we can and can't do with edges, but for now we're just going to cover the manipulation of them, the moving and so on. So from edges we've got faces. Now a face is a three-sided triangle joined to another set of three-sided triangles. So here we can see I've selected this face here, and I can now move that as an individual. I can move it around, I can scale it, I can do things like extrude it, I can create my own new faces, I can divide them, I can attach them and detach them, I can tessellate them, which means it'll break it up into a series of smaller faces. Okay, moving on from that, we've got polygons. Now a polygon is an edge of a primitive object, so here we can see this would be considered a polygon. So as you can see, I've selected it, I can now move it, I can scale it, I can rotate it. A few of the things we can do to these: we can create new edges, we can attach, we can divide, we can extrude, and this brings me to a very important feature, and we'll get into this a bit more when we get into modeling techniques. We can extrude them, which means we can add to the object. We can also do this with faces. We can tessellate them, which will break them into smaller faces. We can explode them. There's a whole myriad of things we can and can't do to them. It's far too many for me to cover in this CD. And then we've got element, which means we can manipulate individual elements of the object. Now this is considered one element because it was a primitive, and other elements on other objects will select in different fashions. So that's the edit mesh modifier.